Hello and welcome to my YouTube page. Today I'm installing Pedders coilovers on a 2009 Pontiac G8. This G8 is in the shop for a V6 to V8 swap, CTSV brakes, a Camaro differential swap, aftermarket front and rear control arms. But today I'm going to install the Pedders Sport Rider Extreme coilover shocks and struts on the G8. Alright, so these are the front coilovers. They were already assembled from the factory. This little nut comes off here. Pull that out and you just slam it into the stock position of the struts that you've already taken off. And then run this back on after you've put the tightening nut on and torque that to 41 foot-pounds. Okay, now the rears are quite a bit different, a bit more difficult. Due to the fact that you have to measure and cut a hole into this, would be a shock mounting bracket. So we have to measure over here 13 millimeters and then come 25 millimeters down right about in that location to put the hole in this so we can install the adjustment knob. So we'll go ahead and do that. So the first number we're looking for is 13 millimeters, and the instructions say right from the step, so that, at least on the instructions, indicates the step, and we'll go 13 millimeters over and then come straight down. So what I'll do is I'll mark that step and go ahead and run the line straight down. So I leave the mount on the table because it's all has different angles on it, and so then I just try to run the line straight down from there and then measure 25 millimeters down. Which is about there. So the instructions recommend using an 8.5 millimeter bit, and so I mic this one and it comes out to about 9. It also states 3/8 of a 3/8 bit will work as well. So I'll just go ahead and center punch this at the mark I've made. Put this in a vise in a way that I don't destroy the flange that's on this mounting shock mount. And drill a pilot hole. I'll run with the 8.5 millimeter or 3/8 bit here. ahead and sweep off the chips. Okay. Since we're going to be running this this knob with a control through that hole, I want to make sure that get any burrs off of the metal that I can. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of these bits to deburr it. Alright, so the instructions call to utilize Loctite on all of the Allen keys or Allen screws that are in here. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. Alright, went ahead and got the spring on, stock washer, and then I have the adjustment knob in my hand. Go ahead and run that adjustment knob into the hole to begin with. Then place the shock in, coil over. Get that so that it will sit in here. We'll put the washer on and just finger tighten the knot. That way the shock doesn't go anywhere when you're trying to finagle this spring together. So what I'm going to do is put the spring in the improper position so it will give me enough room to place my hand. See if we can get that better. So I can actually get my hand in here and run the Allen key and tighten up the Allen right here. So let's go ahead and get a light on here. All right. Alright, so I went ahead and got the little clamp on the adjuster nut inside the spring, and you can see why you want to go ahead and keep this good and wide so you can get your hands in there and tighten the Allen key, or yeah, the Allen key and the Allen bolt that's in there, and keep the adjustment cable that keeps the adjustment cable on the adjustment knob. Place a little bit of Loctite on our Allen. Alright, so there you can see the cap and the Allen keys installed and Loctited, both of them. Both of the Allen screws that are installed are Loctited on the inside. So we'll just go ahead and place the sheath on. That protects the cable here. We'll go ahead and put the sheath on and put the cap on and tighten her up. Alright, as you can see, I chucked this into my aluminum clamps on my vise to keep the shock upright, and so we can go ahead and do some final tuning on it. Alright, so again, we're going to go ahead and be conscious of the knob extension here while we're tightening everything up. So we'll go ahead and start up here, get this thing tightened down. Got an Allen key in the top here. Okay, so that can become difficult to hang on to when you're cranking this this guy down. So I like to use a socket to place over, and that just makes my tender hands, doesn't hurt them as much. Because if you don't hold this Allen key up here, you can see that you can turn the whole assembly inside here. So we don't want to put any undue strain on this knob extension here. So go ahead and set that up right. And we'll go ahead and run this lock nut down. And the instructions from Pedders say until it's tight. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to run it down until it's tight. That's tight. Alright. So then now, we've got the spring here, but we haven't really preloaded it yet. Alright, so what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and put the preload on this spring. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and use these two, the lock nut here and then the adjuster nut here. So what I'll first do is I'll go ahead, and this is kind of sloppy, so we'll take some slop out of the spring by adjusting the adjuster nut up. Make sure the spring is seated where we want it. Make sure to get that slop out. And so now the spring is just against the rubber bushing up there. So I'm going to run the lock nut right up against the adjuster nut, and then I'm going to hold the lock nut, and I'm going to go ahead and get started on compressing the spring. And then what will happen is once this adjuster nut is 10 millimeters above the lock nut, then I have the required preload that's required on the coilover, the rear coilover. .4. .8. .2. So we'll back her down just a bit. 10.03, close enough. Alright, so now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take the lock nut, run it up against the adjuster nut, and go ahead and tighten that down. Okay, rear's complete. Alright, so the instructions also indicate if you live in an area of adverse weather, then you should go ahead and put some lock or anti-seize on the adjuster nut. Now this is already set. I won't be moving this because this is not how you adjust the ride height in on the G8. So once this is locked down, this setting is supposed to stay as is. Your ride height adjustment comes from here with this lock nut. You release this lock nut, and I don't have it very tight. And then you move that lock nut up, and then you thread this housing into the bottom piece. And so this is what adjusts your ride height up and down and allows you to maintain the same spring rate. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and apply some anti-seize here, and then we'll run this lock nut on the anti-seize, and therefore if I need to spin the shock housing deeper into this clevis or sleeve here, then I'll have the lubricant there to make sure that it'll go in there without seizing and binding up. Okay, now I'll wipe everything off with acetone, or probably acetone, and then that will keep any dirt from getting clogged up into the anti-seize, and we'll go from there. Excellent. Alright, so let's go ahead and put the driver's front coilover in the car here. So you can see that this right straight from the box goes right into place. Alright, so the first ring I'm going to run with is a 24mm socket. There is a place for the Allen key in here to go in and hold that shock, but it's pretty much goes right down without spinning. So go ahead and get this close to being tight, and then we use a torque wrench and set it to 41 per the instructions. It's tight. Okay, so we'll go ahead and set the torque wrench to 41 foot-pounds. Make sure the shock is oriented the way I want it, and we'll just give it a, there we go. Put the adjuster cap on. This is a 17mm nut. let's go ahead and work on the back. Alright, so here we are at the driver's side rear of the G8, and you'll notice the adjustment knob that we installed. It goes to the inside of the vehicle. And get one started here just to hold her in place. Alright. You'll notice there's not much suspension or spindle or knuckle under here. That's all been pulled out. I did the I'm going to go ahead and do all the lower control arms on this build along with wheel bearings, and then change to the CTSV brakes. So I just pulled everything out. Just a lot easier. So there's the coilover, rear coilover. Now before I get into adjusting a whole bunch of things, we have to get get all the suspension back on, and then the lower control arms have to be just barely tightened. So when the car is set down on all 4 tires, we'll go ahead and drive it around a little bit to let the suspension settle before we do a final tighten on everything. So a lot of adjustment has to be done. We'll do a complete video on just the tuning this thing up and setting the adjustment correctly. So getting pretty close to the end of this one, but there's a good view inside of the Camaro differential that was installed. That's a Posi 342 or 345, I don't remember, I'll have to look it up, unit with 35,000 miles on it. So that ought to stick the 2 tires down, and we'll go from there. So here we are.